the reason why Christians, yes, the modern day Christians must observe the Sabbath and still go to church. Well, we must not look at the Sabbath as a law which was for Judaism. We must look at the Sabbath as a principle of life. When we look at the book of Genesis, we realize that every time God has done something, He will look at it in terms of reflecting upon it, and then God will say, it is good. That means God is reflecting upon what He has done. And He is actually probably saying, in terms of manufacturing production, you do something and you quality check it. And when it is of the highest quality, or when it is of the standard that you wanted to do it with, you check mark it and say that it is good. Then you pass it. So God was doing the same thing. Each and everything that God had done, He was looking at it and saying that it was good. So He was reflecting upon His own actions. And ask yourself this: if God, being perfect, not being able to do anything, not being able to make a mistake, but yet God reflected upon what He has done to see how good it is, what about a fallen man? You see, so it is important that we have to realize that on a weekly basis, we do a lot of things. We engage a lot of people in conversations. We speak to them as employers or as employees. The way that we speak to them, in the manner that we speak to them, in the manner that we do things during the week, requires reflection. You see, you could be an employer who does not care about people, who is abusive, who speaks to people in language that is abusive, that is downgrading. When you do not put the time and the place in which on that day you reflect upon on what you have done during the week, you may continue doing the same thing because you never think about the quality of the way that you do things in accordance with Scripture. So what we are supposed to do as Christians is that we're supposed to reflect upon our works on a weekly basis, on a daily basis if you can. But on a weekly basis is how the Bible says that, the Sabbath, which was on a weekly basis, once a day, once a week. So when you reflect upon the things that you have done during the week, you're asking yourself, the way that I spoke to that man, was it the way that God wants people to speak to one another? Is it the way that Jesus would have wanted me to speak to other people? The way that I was saying that, homosexuals are wrong, they must go to hell, or Islam is from the devil, is it the way? This is not about whether or not what you tell is the truth. It's the way you're doing it. Is it the way that Jesus would have talked to a Muslim? Is it the way that Jesus would have spoken to a gay person? The way that you did it. You understand? So you're reflecting, and you're reflecting upon your actions based on what Scripture teaches. And when you realize that you're wrong in your approach, you may be right in terms of doing what Scripture is saying, but your approach was wrong, your tone was wrong, your spirit was wrong. Then you realize that you have work in terms of changing your spirit, in terms of changing your tone, in terms of having respect, in terms of being polite when you speak about God or you speak about Christ. Then you see your reflection upon what you do and how you do it helps you to become a better Christian, grows you in becoming Christ-like. So it's not a religious thing. It's not a religious ritual which you do because the Bible says you must do. It's a principle of life which must be natural because we do a lot of things so we get busy. And in our busyness, in the things that we do, we end up, doing things in a wrong way. And when we do things in that way, we end up using the wrong tone and the wrong spirit. And in that makes the whole thing wrong. You see, because sometimes when we listen to Christians, they get caught up in Scripture that they forget that we are being Christ-like. You see, so an atheist may say something which is offensive to Christians, but instead of trying to listen to what he's saying and address him in such a way that he could also be able to listen to you without feeling offended because of the approach and the tone of your voice, you just say, the fool said there is no God. That is dismissive. Because once you said that the fool said there is no God, you have dismissed this atheist that you will never be able to speak to him again. But when you try to shock him the irrationality of his argument, the irrationality of what he believes, in terms of scripture, and saying, look at this, look at it. If you were to say that God doesn't exist, you would have no law. You would even have no reason to marry, because it is God who instituted the marriage. An animal cannot just come up and say, let's get married. You see, this is what God instituted when He created Eve. You see, now you're rationally reasoning with Him, so that He could see that, this thing could have not just came out of evolution, or come out of the middle of the air. You understand? So your tone, your approach is an approach of a human being to another human being. And you're obeying the law that do unto others the way that you would like them to do unto you. So you want people to approach you with respect, to approach you with humanity, without dismissing you. So you're doing the same thing. So when you think about all these things which you've done in a reflective manner, in which you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about your actions, you're thinking about the way that you live your life, and you correct where you're wrong, that's how you grow in being, because we're supposed to be. Most Christians are more worried about doing. You're supposed to be, because when you learn what you're supposed to be, then you're gonna look at the actions, you're gonna look at the things that you're supposed to do in order to get there. But if you think about your life in terms of doing, you may not really think about what you're supposed to be. You may just do without thinking about what you're being. You see, which is a wrong approach. So you need to reflect upon what you're doing and how you're doing, especially on a weekly basis. That's how you observe the Sabbath. And somebody might say, but then what about church? Well, think about it. When you go to church, you don't really reflect upon what you're doing. You go to church, the pastor preaches the message of the day. You come back, you go home. Did you really think about your own personal actions during the week? No, you did not. That means you did not reflect. And the fact that you did not reflect means that you could go on and on and on without reflecting upon your own actions, and you find yourself in sin. You find yourself that you're treating people in a bad way, you're treating people in a Christ-like way. You are approaching people in a Christ-like way. And then in that, you are making yourself not to be Christian. But when you reflect upon these things, you are seeing the errors of your ways and you're fixing them. Because we're supposed to grow, and the only way to grow is to continue doing that is good and throw away what is bad, and correct the means of doing the things that we're doing. That's how you reflect. That's how you observe the Sabbath. So you can observe the Sabbath and still go to church, because to observe the Sabbath is a personal thing. Because the Israelites, in terms of observing the Sabbath, where they had to reflect upon whether they were, you know, fulfilling the law of God, whether they were doing the things that God wanted them to do. Us, it's about life, because we are not in a religion. It's about the way that we live. We're reflecting upon the way, the lifestyle that we live, whether it's Christ-like, whether it's scriptural, whether the way that you treat your wife or your husband is according to the Bible teachings. And when you realize that you're not treating your wife the way that you're supposed to, according to the teachings of the Bible, then by the nature of you trying to be Christ-like, you're forced to change. You're forced to change your way of treating your wife, or the way that you speak to your husband, or the way that you speak to your children, the way that you're raising your children. You're forced because you have reflected upon it. You have thought about it, and you realize that it is wrong. But if you have never thought about it, you can continue doing it until eventually the whole thing blows up in your face, and you realize that you've been doing this for the past 10 years. But if you could have, for 1 week or each week, think about the way that you're doing things in terms of reflecting and thinking about things in standard of scripture, you could have changed a long time ago, and these things would have never happened to you. So that is all that I have to say about why Christians should observe the Sabbath. Thank you for listening.